Hello, and welcome to Delta Source, your number one source for unexpected betrayal. Today we're back on Clone Wars again, and we're talking about the episode Cloak of Darkness after some time not talking about the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
Though,
in
who knows
between
what order the
recording, it's
episodes will
been several months
get.
since we recorded our last one of these. So this is episode 9 of the first season of Clone Wars. Let's go ahead and look at that quote that we have for this one. Ignore
Yes.
your instincts at your peril. Ooh.
Mm.
We'll go ahead and
That's
read,
generally pretty good advice, I guess.
yeah, we'll read an episode description here. Ahsoka and Jedi Master Luminara escort captured Viceroy Newt Gunray to trial, unaware that Count Dooku has dispatched his deadly apprentice, assassin, Asajj Ventress, to free the prisoner and eliminate the Jedi. And since we usually forget to say it, I'm gonna remember this time to say spoilers? Because we're
Not,
talking about the
not
whole
just spoilers
episode.
for this episode from 15 years ago. Yes, there
Yeah.
will be spoilers. A Deadly Apprentice Assassin Asajj. I wonder. This maybe should have been a comma there or something. I see what you mean though. The pronunciation, the phraseology on that's a little odd, I guess. Although
Yeah,
Apprentice Assassin Asajj also is good alliteration at least. So
true,
there's
true.
that. Uh,
So, do you have any opening thoughts on this episode?
yeah. I remember watching this episode as a kid and thinking that, oh man, these Senate guard guys are kind of neat. It's good to see that there's Republic forces that aren't clone troopers
Mm-hmm.
also involved in the fighting. Oh, Captain Argaius, he seems kind of cool.
Right.
Oh,
Oops.
never mind.
Too late for that.
Uh,
So I had, as I always do, I had some leading questions.
hmm.
Who follows their instincts? Who ignores their instincts? And does ignoring their instincts lead to peril? And I don't know if those questions 100% help me with this episode based on what
Yeah.
actually happened there, but it did make me wonder, like, I mean, isn't everyone following their instincts?
Kind of. I mean, the first thing I definitely think of is that scene where they're all talking to Ahsoka and kind of giving her input as to what they think she should do, and then Dunu Montgomery's like, "I never risk my neck for anybody."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there is that where they're all telling her, "Hey, my instincts say we should do this, that, or the other thing," and then she kind of ends up going with, I guess, what her instinct was, which was trying to fight Ventress.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's kind of about Ahsoka. The main person I think who's supposed to be following their instincts in this episode is probably Ahsoka, just because she's the youngest one and she's the one who's the most like susceptible to influences by the people around her. Uh, Both in terms of like role models, other Jedi and stuff that she should be looking up to, and also in terms of like, well, I mean, even New Gunray's chipping in with his advice on what
Yeah.
his instincts would say, though she doesn't listen to him, obviously. But
So I definitely think Ahsoka is a big person who's following instincts here. Another thing I wondered is with Master Luminara being, the one of the like guiding role models for Jedi, like to what extent would we count the Jedi path and following Jedi practices being instincts versus suppressing instincts? So like,
oh, that's a good point.
Luminara, like all Jedi, was trained in that from childhood, so is following the Jedi course of action, does that count as Luminara following her instincts, or is that still based in suppressing a more instinctual nature that wouldn't do all the things a Jedi does?
Yeah, maybe Jedi shouldn't be following their instincts at that point, huh?
Because we
Uh,
should be, or we or Jedi should be listening to the Force and following that.
Yeah, maybe and is the force your instinct, or is ignoring your instincts? I'm trying to think of what Yoda was telling Luke back in Episode 5. About Jedi and instincts and fielding the force, and
Hmm.
because Luke's first instinct is to go help his friends, and
Right.
that doesn't help. So maybe you shouldn't follow your instincts as a Jedi.
Yeah.
And
So,
Argaius' first instinct is to betray the Republic, and that gets him stabbed in the throat. So I don't know that
right.
that was necessarily a great idea either. Although maybe that wasn't his first instinct. Maybe that was him. You know,
Seizing on an opportunity.
Yeah, maybe he was corrupted somehow. Maybe that's not something he would have normally done. Maybe he was
Hmm.
betraying his own instincts to do it because he thought it'd be more advantageous, and then he ended up paying for it. We don't really know enough about him So,
Right.
and then he dies, so we don't really aren't gonna know much about him anymore. Oh well.
So here's the biggest thought that I had is I think it's possible to look at this quote and this episode together and come away with the impression that the Jedi way itself actually is the negation of instincts and that it leads to one's own peril. Because when you think about it, Ventress is the only character that is completely successful in this episode.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Ahsoka,
very true.
when she emulates non-Jedi action from Anakin's influence, such as, threatening Gunray, is actually rewarded with Gunray talking. At the end of the episode, Luminara thanks Ahsoka for teaching her, and the only things that she could have taught are things like threatening prisoners, or things like abandoning one's post. And that leaves us the impression that Ahsoka was actually right the whole time, doing all the things that are not strictly of the Jedi way.
Huh.
Now, I don't know to what extent they actually intended that to be the takeaway.
Right.
I feel like this is just one of those cases where it was maybe a clumsy fit between the episode and the quote. But
Right, and we were
yeah.
just this is us looking at it years later as two like college educated adults trying to look way too deeply into a show that's intended for 12-year-olds to watch something after school. You know? Possibly.
Exactly. So that pretty much wraps up my notes. Do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
Um other than that, I don't know. I do think this is the first one we've got where the quote doesn't necessarily line up all that clearly with the episode, but on the other hand, the quote is kind of vague. So it's one of those things that you can sort of make it work, or you can also make it not work.
Right.
Interpret it as you will, I suppose. It was a pretty good episode though for season one. I mean, I definitely thought it was. There's some not as good episodes in season one, but I thought this one was pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
I dig this one.
yeah.
Alright, well, I guess this is kind of on the shorter side for our Clone Wars quotes episodes, but
Yeah.
I guess that's all we got for you. So until next time, this has been Delta Source, your number
Yeah.
one source for realizing the Jedi way might not always be right. Gasp. But in spite of that, may the Force be with you.
May the force stay with you, man.